Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
You're the biggest part of me. Oh, hi there. This is Mr. Goodnight. Now, if you've been listening this far, you've probably been wondering, oh no, is this one of them episodes that don't got Mr. Goodnight in it? Well, sometimes, sorry, Charlie, but your country just needs you. You see, about a month ago, the ghost of John Wayne came to me in a dream, and he said, Mr. Goodnight, you've been wasting away out in La La Land amongst the pinkos and the commies. You gotta go back to the real America, the land of the red, white, and blue with a deer and antelope play. So obedient to the Duke, I got in my car and I drove cross country until I got to my sometimes hometown of Creve Coeur, Missouri. I got out, I went to the Schnucks, and I got me a dirt cheap beer, and then I went over to Bellevue Country Club. And let me tell you something, Daddy, when them Creve Coeur boys saw my number 3 word, and when Mr. Goodnight can do it, they said, Mr. Goodnight, we want you in the PGA Championships this year, right here, you understand, in Creve Coeur. So now then, point is, well, y'all's out there playing with y'all's balls out in the West Coast. Mr. Goodnight gonna be in Creve Coeur playing with my balls.
I'll fix to start kicking ass, just like it said at the beginning of the program.
Man of the hour, tower of tower, too sweet to be sour.
Sending your ass on the jabroni jet to the other side of the territory, brother.
The Alabama Hammer.
Nightmares on the best part of my day.
The goods from the woods.
Hot damn!
Welcome to the Goods from the Woods. My name is Rivers Langley.
I am Pat Riley.
Joe Raines here.
And our guest today, so this is sort of a first for the podcast. This is a podcast blind date, essentially, set up by multiple time guests. Monica Scott, who is currently on a sojourn across the South. She was in Nashville recently and texted me and was like, there is a comedian in Nashville that you simply must meet. And that was how it was put to me. So we got in touch and we've been texting, and I'm so happy to meet him finally and to have him on the show. This is our friend,
Dr. Benjamin Sawyer.
Yeah, Ben Sawyer is here.
I'm full of surprises.
And are you
very interesting?
Are you from Nashville originally, or
no? I'm from Cabarrus County, North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like outside of Charlotte.
Okay,
I've lived in Nashville for like 5.5 years.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
I love it. I started doing comedy out here for like 2 months, and then I moved to
Nashville. LA. You mean?
Yeah, I lived in Big Bear Lake for a while.
In the lake?
There were times I thought about just living in the lake, just going to the bottom of it.
Were you training with Tito Ortiz or something like that in Big Bear?
No, but I did find out that he lives like up the street from where my wife's family's cabin is.
Oh, no kidding.
It's like a different world, though. It's like there's like an intersection, it changes, and all the houses are like 12,000 square feet, and you like that's where he lived.
Right. Oh, okay. So it was real obvious.
Yeah, it wasn't like, hey, he might just live in a house like us. No, he lived in a mansion.
Yeah. That's great. And so you were living in Big Bear, which, by the way, if you're listening to this and you've never been to LA, Big Bear is not super close.
It's like 2 hours away, but if you live in Big Bear, it's like living 75 years in the past.
Yeah.
So to drive to just 2 hours to be in the 21st century seemed like a really good deal.
Right. Well,
it actually sounds pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, it ain't bad. I mean, shit.
I've been to that Lake Arrowhead, and then that
very similar.
Similar to that does make you feel like you're in a different state.
Right. Well, they have grass, they have weather.
There's green stuff,
snow.
There's a general store.
Yeah.
Like when I went to God, what was it called, Green Lake or something? It's by like Idlewild for my birthday.
Oh, okay.
Like fishing. The town was basically a real estate agency, a general store, and a biker bar, and that was the whole thing. Okay. And the biker bar was also the sandwich shop. So it's
all right,
multi-purpose. Yeah,
it was an amazing place to go.
And a bait shop.
My wife and I both came back from doing research in Russia. I mean, she wasn't my wife at the time. We were just like, I was like, I think I want to marry her. It panned out. So.
Yeah.
But she was like, well, my family has a cabin we're not using, and I was like, well, okay. And dude, it was like, I don't know. I have a Southern accent, and for some people, they're just like, "Oh, cool, we can say whatever we want to this guy. He's definitely racist."
Oh God, yeah.
And so
yeah.
I got the real honest side of Big Bear Lake within about 48 hours of being there.
Yeah.
And was like, I think I'll just stay in the cabin a lot.
I had a similar experience with Chicago.
Yeah.
Where it was like the second I got to Chicago to do stand-up, they were just like, "Oh, you're from Alabama? Well, here's 18 racist jokes in a row. I'm hilarious." It's like, oh God,
I've been
oh
waiting to
God.
tell these to somebody. It's so good to
I mean, it really does feel like they have a suitcase full of racist jokes, just waiting for a chubby fat guy to come through, and it's just like, "Oh, you're from the South? Well, let me tell you a few.
Please sample my wares.
No, so it's funny because when I tell people that I'm from the South, people are like, "No, you're not."
Yeah.
Like I just get the people that are like, "No, no, you're not. You're not from the South."
But you don't sound like you're from the South.
No,
like
I
racist
wish
shit
I
is like,
wish
that's what they
I
think.
had a thick Southern because there's nothing like. I like a lecture in a Southern accent. It has a level
I was about
of
to say,
gravity and
Yeah,
folkiness.
I want to sound
you know?
like my name is, Beauregard Delacroix. Like I want that.
Yeah, that would be dope.
That crazy Louisiana shit where it's just, sounds like your tongue is dying as you're talking.
I want to sound like an extra from Confederacy of Dunces. That's what I want to sound.
I often open lectures by talking about the morning before the Pickett's charge.
So yeah, Shelby Foote, I guess is what I'm describing from.
You wear a bolo
But
tie.
I'm referencing. Oh
Of
my
course,
God.
yeah. Oh no, I'm an insane person. I watched the Ken Burns Civil War documentary to sleep. I'll pop it up on the laptop, turn the brightness all the way down, and just listen to him just be like, only two geniuses emerged from that war, Mr. Lincoln and Mr. Forrest. And I told that to Mr. Forrest's great-granddaughter, and she said, well, we don't care too much for Mr. Lincoln in our household. And I just thought that was wonderful. I'm like, okay. I'm so sad he died before the age of Pixar, because he could have been such... Because they put Sarah Vowell. I mean, we talked about this on our
Dude,
Disney
I heard
episode.
that. I was gonna give you guys the most love ever. Sarah Vowell's like my hero, and
She's
the
great.
fact that you on the last one, first of all, Melly Fusella is awesome.
Yeah.
She
She
came
rules.
to
She's the
Nashville.
best,
She's
yeah.
amazing. And I
Yeah.
was listening to that episode, and not only when you were talking about The Incredibles, did you do the nerdiest and best thing ever, which was to reference Sarah Vowell,
Yeah.
then reference a book, then play a clip of her talking. I was
Right,
like, I
right.
almost flipped the audiobook on and just listened to Lafayette in the Somewhat United States before I got here.
Yeah.
Because I had a professor when I was an undergrad, this guy named Joe Crispino, and he was a historian and he studied the New South, like he studied like white flight and stuff like that in the
Right.
South, and he had one of those kind of accents.
Right.
And I had another professor that had the similar sort of thing, just like I'm around here somewhere.
Dude.
But like Joe Crispino was cool as shit because he was like, it was like Central Casting casted like the professor. He's a good-looking guy, tall, had that Southern accent, and very.
Wow, your
very
central casting professor is different from mine.
Well,
Mine
no,
is
like-
mine is bald with the horseshoe and patches on the elbow.
Well, no,
Yours
this is-
sounds like he wears bolo ties with like turquoise jewelry.
but he played. There's a country artist, Carolyn Herring.
I'll give you
And
extra
he,
credit if you beat me in arm wrestling.
Yeah, Carolyn. He played. So Carolyn Herring is a country singer songwriter, and he played stand up bass for her on tour and stuff during performances. Like this
No
guy
shit.
ruled.
Wow.
His dad played in the NFL. It was just like, yeah, this guy was.
Oh, that's fantastic.
The coolest. And he had that Southern accent. I was like, damn, if I lectured, I want to sound like that guy.
Right.
But I don't. I have my shitty voice.
Yeah.
You can
My-
still get someone to play stand-up bass with you, though.
That'd be
You should
awesome.
Definitely invest in that.
I never thought about the fact that I could actually use a stand-up bass player while I'm giving lectures.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a genius idea.
Have a bongo and a stand up bass and
Mitch Hedberg had that stand-up bass on his first album. There's this Charlie, I forget his last name, but like there's a guy from Birmingham who was in bands, and his dad was the stand-up bass player on Mitch Hedberg's first album, and that was like his claim to fame in Birmingham.
I was going to say, you
Wow.
said that like you've heard somebody say that exact line over and over again. Did you know my dad played the bass on Mitch Hedberg?
Right.
Well, he never said it. Everybody, he would like every time he'd walk into a room, like the room would hush, and everybody'd be like, "His dad was the stand-up bassist on Mitch Hedberg."
Don't fuck up the bass tonight, Chuck, because we're on CD here. Just fucking keep it going. Don't fuck up a scale. This joke's all gonna go right here. So I wish I could play Little League now. I'd kick some fucking ass. I'd be way better than before. Good back up now. All right. That joke kicked off the CD right there. Kind of weak, man.
Imagine you're a musician and that's your. I mean, it's a cool credit, but it also has nothing to do with music.
Oh, yeah,
it's just aesthetic.
He goes to the music union. He's like, "Yeah, I got this gig playing for this drugged out dude that does all these one-liners, playing bass on it. I could have played bass on the Tim McGraw album, but I couldn't. I got this guy.
Running my scales while this guy's asking the crowd for OxyContin, which he
Xanax
did.
and Coke, man.
Yeah, which he did, by the way. One of his last shows was at Auburn University.
Yeah.
It was a UPC show, and he was just asking the crowd for pills.
He was going to go to Emory, and he died like 3 days beforehand.
Right, that's what.
Yeah, he came. He was in Birmingham. Like I saw him in Birmingham. Like
we all
maybe
saw
a month before he died.
Yeah, I was pumped for Hedberg, and I ended up with Jim Brewer.
That's quite a step down.
When Jim Belushi was busy, like, dude, my professor that I had that was the most like a professor you thought when you were a kid would be the professor was I did Russian language classes at Indiana University, and the guy's name was Larry Richter. He's Andy Richter's father.
What? No shit.
And dude, he was amazing. Like he would teach us how to pronounce words correctly.
Yeah.
And he was like, basically he would start, it was like a small class, like 15 people, and he would make the first person read the line on the page. And if you didn't say it right, he would go, no, do it again. And there were days where we didn't even get through in an hour, 15 people reading one line. Because he would just stare at somebody. No, that's not right. Say it again. Say it again. It was amazing. I loved him. If you did it right, you did it right. It was no questioning.
I had a professor, and he was definitely one of the ones that fit the archetype of what a professor, like you'd expect a type of professor. He was this guy by the name of Jonathan Prude who's a history professor.
Good last name.
And he did like
he was scandalized by everything.
He was like no foul language in this class.
Man,
please.
this guy did
He's
not
wearing the 1920s bathing suit to the pool where it's basically just
no, this guy
that
did
is Professor Prue.
His last name did not fit his
My dear, why are all these
personality.
children here undressed?
Mrs. Neesmith, your Nike shorts are giving me the vapors.
Who are these unkempt children coming from?
No elbows on the seminar table, but no. So Jonathan Prude
Who wants to buy my Iroquois jewelry?
These hoops and sticks are ruining American culture.
He did material history of the 19th century, and he focused on the Northeast, like New England. And this guy, I think he was from New York. He was about 5'3" or 4. Came in, rumpled all the pieces of paper, sits down. He's like, "All right, what do you read this? You read this? Well, let me submit to you."
This is not at all
Pat Riley, and he's just like leans in, and he's like, "Let me submit to you. What did E.P. Thompson mean by social history?"
Was your professor Jim Norton?
I was thinking it was like, I have nipples, Greg. Could you milk me?
I know, and the hilarious, and like you would talk, and he would sit there, and he'd be like chewing on the book like Jerry Tarkanian used to chew on towels during like UNLV games, and he'd get around and be like, "You're wrong. That's not correct. Kelly Irby, let me submit to you." And he was awesome. He was just like unhinged.
Oh man!
And like I remember one time he, I remember I wore a T-shirt and he saw that I had tattoos. He's like, What are those supposed to be? Like it was like Eddie Pepitone was my history professor, and like one of the most ridiculous.
This is my syllabus.
Yeah.
Now he's become Gilbert Godfrey.
Oh yeah.
Ow! But I remember the last class we had. We went to Mellow Mushroom and got pizza.
Oh boy!
And he like rolled up in his like late 80s, early 90s Volvo station wagon.
Oh, I was like, it's either a Volvo or a Bug.
Comes out. He was just stoked the entire time that they had those big oil can Fosters on special for happy hour, and he's like, "This is the best deal in town."
And he's like 5'3", so he's like sitting in front of what to us would be like a 64-ounce can of beer. He's like, "It's like a pitcher."
Jonathan Prude, I mean, he was awesome, man. He was one of those professors where it's like Larry Richter, where it's just like, God, if I get this question wrong, you like have that like sweat just go right down.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
like, if I get this wrong, the hell gate is going to open.
But you love those people.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're like, if I get past this guy,
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah,
Well, usually that's
might
like
not do
the department would stick those 8 holes in the 100 level classes. So like it would cull all the assholes out. Where like all the
Yeah.
kids who didn't want to like go.
Didn't work for me.
I
Yeah.
had a professor. I was telecommunications and film in Alabama, and we had this professor for like TCF like 110. And it was like known like he's gonna be an asshole because the rest of the class is literally sitting in front of like a soundboard and you will pass for showing up. So,
Right.
like, that class was like the class to get all the people out. I had to take it like 3 times. And he would show up marginally drunk, and you'd be like, "Isn't that the guy I saw on his bicycle going to Egan's?" And you were like trying to put it together in your head, like, "Is this guy drunk?" And he'd always have this huge thermos, and he reeked of vodka, and he would always start the class off like marginally drunk, and by the end of it, he'd be slurring. And then if we showed a movie, he'd just be passed the fuck out, like laid the fuck
Movie
out.
ends,
Like,
goes back to the
ends.
DVD menu, and everyone's
Yeah.
just sitting
I
there.
mean, we watched What About Bob?
Wait, what was the class?
It was like TCF 110, like intro to something.
It sounds like
it was the one-
gym class when it's
Yeah, it was
progress
basically-
report
it was
day where you
like
have to watch Space Jam.
If you just showed up to the class, you'd be like, well, this isn't that hard. But then, like, it'd also have, like, 20 papers in APA that were, like doggedly graded. So, like,
Right.
basically, they were just, like, it was the one where they'd call the idiots who didn't actually want to be in college out, which is why I had to take it 3 times.
Yeah.
But mostly it was just him being insanely drunk and like being really excited about like how radio waves go over the curvature of the earth, and then being like,
Dude, what the fuck was this class?
Telecommunications.
it was just the opening.
I love the way you're like, I get it. Like sometimes you remember a class and you don't remember the professor's name.
Yeah.
You remember the professor, but you don't know what the fuck class it was.
Yeah,
That
It
is
was
a
like
weird.
It was the intro into telecommunications, so it was like explain to you like how TV works, how radio works, what the real life applications of what you're going to be learning later are. But
The
like
real life implications of your life choices. He's just like,
yeah,
have
like-
another drink.
basically, yeah. And then he would
Let me tell you about working at Starbucks.
He'd randomly go into his divorce.
Doesn't even work there. He just shows up.
Because he was living in an apartment off campus, so he'd like be talking about how like payola, or he'd be talking about something like that in radio, because most of us wanted to be in radio. And so he would be talking about that, and then randomly start talking about his divorce and his ex-wife. And it would, like,
He's talking about Alan Freed, and then all of a sudden he
Yeah.
breaks to be
I mean,
like, my
legitimately.
bitch of a wife.
And legitimate, he didn't call her a bitch, but he would legitimately be like talking about like one time he went on this like long, huge story about the Wolfman Jack and how the radio station would go throughout the states.
Called him the Wolfman Jack. That was awesome.
And then he would just randomly be like, and then I'm living in an apartment now because I don't have. And we were like, wait, how did we get here? And he would just be. He seemed to be really enjoying his descent into like the spiral. Like he was just
Well, he's
really
basically
digging
He was
it.
leaning into the spiral.
He's a walking Don DeLillo protagonist.
Yeah, he was like he was the professor in Animal House, but like less cultured. So he like would show up in like plaid shirts that obviously hadn't been washed in like months, like unbuttoned halfway down, and like his hair would be all miskept, and he like had like these shitty ass pants where like they had gotten grease from the spokes of his bike on there, and you just see him like, and like when he'd ride his bike through campus, it wouldn't be a straight line. Like he was obviously under the influence, just going like this, just weaving, and you just be like, that's the coolest fucking.
I gotta say, I'm just picturing Tom Wolfe who's been run through like a dryer cycle with a bag of dirt, like just tumbled around.
Dude, there's a professor at my university who just wore sweatshirts from the 80s with like bears printed on them.
Nice.
Like, I mean, he looked like he mugged your grandma in like 83 and took all of her finest.
just
like,
assumed her identity.
Not even hoodies, man. Just like regular full-on sweatshirts with like the same pair of
Neck,
pants.
applique, yeah.
But you know what? He was awesome.
Yeah.
So he could just get away with it. We were like, we don't even see
did
it. We see your genius. We can't even see the bear. This like Merry Christmas, and it's freaking May. Like, we don't even care.
I had some like activist shit in the 60s, and he assumes someone's identity, and that's how he hides now is the weird clothes.
The weatherman, yeah.
So you teach history, right? That is the.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is technically an academic podcast.
Well,
today.
Oh, but his glasses on.
Yeah, I was talking to you before the thing started, and you mentioned a topic that I obviously I referenced it a minute ago, Civil War stuff, and you brought up the subject of the Huntley.
Yes, the Hunley, the CSS Hunley. And I just was thinking, like, what good could I use to history, like on from history on a podcast like this? And I wanted to tell you guys a story about the stupidest invention that a person ever invented.
I
you guys want to hear that?
Of course.
I'm dying to
You
hear
guys
it.
know about the
The
Hunley?
Hunleys, yeah, my dad's.
I don't know anything
My
about
dad's
Civil War.
was a submariner, so like.
Not in the Hunley, he wasn't.
No, he wasn't. No. My dad.
nobody
My dad's
was.
the only survivor. He's 200 years old.
I mean, if you survived the Hunley, you might be 200 years old. That would be the only way. You'd be like Tuck Everlasting. Whoa, childhood reference. Anyway, so the Hunley was the stupidest invention ever. And basically, this guy Hunley, he was on the Confederate side. He invented a submarine. And here's how it worked. It was just a tube that opened on one end. And down the middle of it ran a crankshaft. And along the crankshaft would sit like 7 people. And it had a propeller on the back. One dude could see, and he would be like, go forward. And all the people would crank the crankshaft, right? And the way it would go, and it would go forward, and then he would go backwards, and then they would crank it the other way, and it would go backwards.
Viking submarine, in a way.
So it's almost like the pedal boats in Echo Park, essentially.
The swan boats.
Dude,
It's the swan
See an
boats.
army of swan boats coming at you.
that's how you. That was one of his biggest flaws, but it had a swan head that came up above the water, so you could see it coming.
That was the periscope.
Yeah, I mean, you felt joy when you saw it coming, but you still knew it was coming. You know,
Psychological warfare.
you don't want your enemies to feel like they're at Disneyland right before they die. You want them to know they're going to die.
Yeah, that
hard
only
death.
works if you're the penguin.
So the way it worked was it would be like, and it was tiny, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be these people cramped in there, and when it went underwater, you couldn't see. So there were candles in there. So
And this was
Yeah.
made out of wood?
Wait,
no,
were there?
it was made out of wood.
It was made out of
No,
metal.
it was made out of metal. It was made out of metal for sure. The wooden submarine.
were they-
Like, say no more. That's what's terrible.
Were they candles like wax candles, or were they like oil lamps or something?
I don't know, man.
That's
Like-
yeah, but it's fire
Oil
lit.
lamps would be
But it's
fucking terrifying in an enclosed space.
Well, I mean, shit. I know the Monitor and the Merrimack both had like coal burning engines and stuff. So below the below decks was just a smoky underwater nightmare.
Like the
But what
great.
if it ran on weed?
man, what if it ran on weed, man? It would be full of cookies.
Wouldn't be any war, man. They'd just be like, "What are we doing?" You know, they'd stop shooting and ramming each other and go home.
We would have stopped the fucking Confederacy, man. They'd be like, let's all be friends.
God, I hate that shit so much. It's like my least favorite thing ever that hippies say is like, if everyone could just do mind expanding drugs, it would change the world. I'm like, no, man, mediocre people have mediocre thoughts, even on drugs. So you need a fucking education. That's what you need, not ayahuasca.
So this submarine, here's the way it would work. You'd get into it, and it would float, and then you would pump this area, right?
Yeah.
You would pump the air out of it and water in, and then its buoyancy would change, so it would go underwater. And then when you got through doing your submarine things, you
Yeah.
would pump all the water out of it, and you'd pump the air back in. The problem is that part was theoretical because it never actually happened.
Yeah.
So they would pump the water in. They pump the water in, and it would go underwater. And the first time they go out to test it, everyone's kind of standing around, and people get in it in this metal death tube. Like they seal the end, they put it in there, and they pump the water in, and it goes underwater. And they're like, "Fuck yeah, it's working!" And then they're like, "Man, they've been under there a real long time."
Jeez.
Like, this thing either really works well or it doesn't work at all. And then finally they were like, everybody's probably dead. And so they went to the bottom and they drug it back up.
Yeah.
I think there was like 7 people in it, and all but 2 died. Right?
Yeah.
And so they got him out of this metal death tube. But Hunley was the guy who invented it. He was like, no, it wasn't the submarine's fault. The guy probably just didn't know how to use it. And so he was like, who wants to go in it the second time?
Jesus
And
Christ.
people were like, nobody did. And so
Why?
Well, I don't know, man. It was just like, so Hunley tells everybody, hey guys, if it wasn't safe, would I go in it? And so Hunley goes in the Hunley, and the second,
You got to believe in your product.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't believe in your product, who will?
exactly.
He's the Ron Popeil of bad ideas.
He's the Vince Offer of.
This would be a great infomercial, by the way.
Hunley here
It's
with
I'm not only the inventor. I'm also. Yeah, what he is, he's also the next round of people that died in it. Hunley,
Yeah, of course.
then died in the Hunley. It's basically named after the guy who died in it. This time, everybody died. And
He
were
built
like-
his own coffin in a way.
He basically
Yeah.
built his own coffin, but
Yeah.
then they shook him out of it, right? Every time they bring it up, they shake it back out. So this time, everyone died. So who's
It's
the
getting
third?
worse. It's
Yeah,
getting worse.
And it's only going to get worse. It gets a little bit better, but then it gets worse again. All right, because they found the third time they take it, send it back out. And at this point, I don't know who the fuck are the third crew that goes in this thing.
Yeah,
or they go to somebody and they're like, "Congratulations! Like we want you to test this out."
Aren't they like pressing? At this point, you got to like they're making them. I'm sure, right? Nobody's like volunteering.
Well, yeah. I mean, basically, we don't know much about the third crew except for like they were probably hanging out and somebody came to them and they were like, "Hey, man, you guys are going to test this? You guys are the top 5 people in our Confederate experimental crew." And they're like, "Weren't we the 15th through 20th recently?" And they're like, "Yeah, but don't worry about why you're not
anymore." They probably had
anymore.
some sort of like
they probably tried to make him feel special, like Steve Zissou did for Willem Dafoe's character, where he was just like, he's like, "Why am I always on B team?" It's like, you're the head of B team. You're my number 2 guy.
That they would come up with some sort of gimmicks to be like, no, it's safe. We got these pig bladders full of air that you can suck on, and we got a bunch of leeches down here.
Like, yeah, those 2 guys over there are still shaking like months later, and they're mad about it. But you know what? They probably aren't honest anyway. You know, like, would you
not
really
elites.
think if they're so scared, then why didn't they die too? I mean, why didn't they die? Anyway,
sure. The failing Richmond Times is calling this a death trap.
Here, put on these fish suits.
But we don't believe the fake news around here.
Put on these frog suits. They work for Mario.
They're like, all right, guys, we're gonna have a who can hold your breath the longest competition. Oh, you guys won it. Put 7 more people in there, all right? And this time they send it out, and this is what's amazing. It makes it out. It doesn't sink right away. And they're along that crankshaft, man. They crank it all out to the ocean. And they find this ship called the USS Housatonic. And they blow it up.
It worked?
Well, I'll let you decide.
I mean, they blew it up.
They blew it up.
Part 1 worked.
Right. And then they celebrated by becoming the third crew to die because they immediately sunk to the bottom. Now, here's the best part. Nobody ever knew why it sunk. They found it like 15 years ago, and they drug it back up. You can go see it. Don't get in it.
There was a movie about it, I think. On
was there a movie about
it? Something like
that?
Yeah.
This is not a happy ending.
Yeah.
Because here's how it sunk ships, all right? And this is fucking great. This is like they bought this from the Acme store. At the front of the submarine, it had a long pole, and at the end of the pole, it had a bomb. This is real, with a barb on it, right?
Yeah.
So when the dude who could see would see a boat, he'd be like, "Go fast!" And all the people would crank as fast as they can, and you run into it, and then you stick the barb. And then once he thought you hit it and stuck in there, he'd be like, "No, go backwards," and it would pull the fuse, boom, and blow up the bomb. And that's how it worked.
Right? Yeah.
Now, nobody knew how it sunk. And just like last year, I think it was, like people went in and built basically a model of it. And what they'd figured out...
Did they get in it?
No, not. Yeah, there's like 38 people dead. It's amazing.
It's still killing people.
They're still trying to figure it out.
We're going to get this.
The South's going to rise again, damn it.
Yeah, we're going to get
Gotta get this to work.
Confederate submarine working.
You've made it through Mississippi SEAL School.
Dude, so it turns out that nobody had like...
taught by Bill Dance.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, damn it.
Oh, damn it.
The Hunley sunk again.
Curses.
Your grandma's going to be so mad at us.
My balls hat is now under the water. It's my new balls hat.
Dude, it turns out they didn't do any measurements on the bomb. And they were inside of a metal tube under the water. And when the bomb exploded, it basically liquefied the insides of everyone in there.
Oh, my God.
Like through like a...
Like a shockwave.
Shockwave, right?
Yeah.
The
concussion of it, like, yeah.
And my students always ask me, they're like, when they found the submarine with the people in there, and I'm always like, yeah, they were pissed. It had been 150 years.
Right.
Where you guys didn't look for us. But the reality is, they found these people, and when they found the remains, they were sitting in the position that they had been in when they were manning the crankshaft.
Yeah.
Right. like big eyes.
Redneck Pompeii.
It wasn't redneck. But they were like, they didn't even seem to panic. They just went down. And it was because their insides were basically liquid.
Yeah, it's because a giant bomb killed them instantly.
Well, when they've been like pretty well preserved too, right?
I think they were pretty well preserved. And like nobody knows exactly who they are.
You can still see their Marshall Tucker Band T-shirts.
Jethro Tull.
I mean, as a person that roots for the Union and this sort of thing, it's a good story at the end, except for the boat, the American boat being blown up. At least they did the bomb thing and not the turtle thing, which I think is like the turtle.
Oh, the Revolutionary War.
Yeah,
one man
just
sub.
It has like a hand drill.
He tried to drill. Do you know much
so
about
the turtle is
ridiculous.
It looks like a dive bell that you'd imagine, like in a steampunk sort of underwater thing that they would all come down in.
It looks like a whiskey barrel that somebody turned a backyard tinkerer was like, I got fucking ideas, guys.
And the way it sunk ships was people were like, look, a barrel of whiskey, and the guy popped out and punched him in the nose.
Just started beating him up.
It's made,
Gotcha.
it's made out
The Trojan whiskey barrel.
Yeah. It's made.
Gotcha.
It looks like it's lacquered wood.
Yep.
And probably filled in with pitch.
Yep.
And it's like the guy pedals. And it has a little propeller on it, and then the weapon is that it's a little hand drill that basically you would pull up to the side of a boat and be like, dunk.
It only works if this is a boat that doesn't have access to some sort of cloth that they can just plug the hole with very simply.
Yeah, basically
Just have one that the British like soldiers who just sticks his finger.
Right,
in
yeah.
The rest of the chest.
the only
Boys,
defense,
we have to find a ship without a little Dutch boy in it.
I was about to say the only defense is a little Dutch boy.
I'm tired. Kevin, keep your fucking finger in there. But I'm tired. Yeah, I swear to God, if you don't keep your finger in there.
My hands are pruning.
My hands are pruning.
Vendor Fry, stop complaining. Boom.
Yeah, no, this is the Hunley's stupid, but this was,
I'm just imagining John Jay just yelling at some little Dutch kid. Keep your thumb in.
Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah, it attacked.
my students just got a-
okay, so they did take it underwater and attacked a boat.
No, they did it. I remember they tried to drill the boat and the boat didn't sink because that's a fucking. Well, why would it?
They were like stuck in the side
After
of the boat.
sunk, they were like dressing down the captain. They're like, "What did you do?" He's like, "I don't know. I was just watching it. I didn't think we should move or anything. We should just watch it."
Well, it's the idea is like you're drilling, but you're floating. Then that means the hole you're drilling anyway is above the water line, so it only like have water come in when.
No, you're
splashes.
submerged. It's a
submerged.
Oh, you're
submersible.
submerged.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
this is the world's first submersible. Was the what they call the turtle, the American turtle, according to this. And you would go just below the boat and you would hit the bottom of the boat.
I love the line on the Wikipedia that you pulled up. One of the central concerns for Bushnell as he planned and constructed the turtle was funding.
Ben Franklin was like, "This seems dumb. We don't want to pay for this."
Well, yeah, all the founding fathers were, they grew hemp, so they probably like smoked weed and stuff.
Oh, they were smoking.
like,
They're probably,
Well,
we
that
want to harsh
and,
somebody's buzz by putting a hole in their boat, man.
George Washington.
That and this is also the time like where water would go bad, so they would just like put liquor in their water. So everybody's just like, "Man, I'm so fucking hydrated. I'm hydrated as shit."
They all got Argo poisoning, and
Yeah.
they're just like tripping.
I've been drinking like spoiled water full of rum all
Going
day.
Salem, dude. I'm going Salem. But no, so
This is amazing. My students just got a new slide in their lecture on the American Revolution. All right.
so they.
The turtle.
So I think they should make a turtle movie.
you might get a rep around campus as like the submarine guy. He's going to talk about weird experimental subs.
So check this out. I have an idea for the
No such
turtle
thing as bad
movie.
press, man.
That's true.
The turtle movie. All right, so check this out. They do, and we can start with the star can be like some like karate guy, like a Steven Seagal or like a Chuck Norris or something like that. And he goes down in the turtle and he drills the hole and gets stuck. So he has to deal with the fact that he's like, oh man, I'm stuck in this little. So there's a moment where he's dealing with claustrophobia. Will I survive? And then the eagle, the boat that he's attacking, pulls into port. And everybody's like, "What's this weird whiskey barrel in here? Let's open it up." Like it's the Trojan whiskey barrel.
Yeah.
They open it up, and your action star
Jean-Claude, dude.
Yeah, Jean-Claude pops
Yeah.
out and proceeds to kicking some ass.
He could be a renegade Hessian.
And then he, instead of like sinking the boat, he just like kicks everyone on the boat's butt,
Yeah.
and thus wins the battle. And he can be Captain von Steubing.
and then here's the catch. It turns out that was Iron Man's fourth great grandfather, Tony Stark's fourth great grandfather. Now is an Avengers prequel.
Nathaniel Stark.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then again, in Bloodsport, he had a Belgian accent, but he was like Frank Dukes. The
very
like
American.
he could like kick people's
Canadian.
heads off, and that's how you get the headless horseman is because he kicked some dude's head
Ooh,
off.
there we go.
That's awesome.
You got like three things going.
He's
on.
looking for revenge on
Rip
Nathaniel Stark.
Rip Van Winkle taught him karate. Dude, Rip Van Winkle was his sensei.
He was like this close to getting his black belt, and then he fell asleep, and he's like, "Fuck."
This movie, we just incorporate all of the Washington Irving, all the weird shit from the time period.
Well, when you said turtle, my head, the first thought my first thought was like,
Adrian Grenier.
No, I was like, are they capturing giant tortoises, drilling holes into the shell, and then like pulling it full of like black powder, and then just like setting it loose with like a fuse
that would be more effective than the actual attack.
And then you just see like turtles like on fire coming towards you and exploding, which would be more terrifying than most stuff anyway.
They probably did that during the Cold War. Like they probably were like they had this.
I mean, if you listen to that, what's that song at a Battle of 1814? They're like using alligators as cannons. So I mean, it's not that far off.
General Amos Moses. But no, it's like
I just wanted to read this because this is the attack on the British ship that they tried to attack with this thing was called the Eagle, and this is fucking hilarious. Just before midnight at 11 p.m. on September 6, 1776, Sergeant Ezra Lee piloted the submersible towards Admiral Richard Howe's flagship Eagle, then moored off of Governor's Island in New York Harbor. On that night, Lee maneuvered the small craft out to the anchorage. It took 2 hours to reach his destination because he was hand manipulating the crankshaft the entire way. So he's literally just pedaling and going like this.
In the ocean water, which sounds hard.
In New York's fucking harbor, which is the terminus of two rivers and the ocean. Yeah. So it would be...
he's basically doing that thing where like a person puts their hands over their eyes and just starts punching.
Yeah, he's shadow boxing out into New York Harbor. So on that night, adding to his difficulties was a fairly strong current and the darkness creeping overhead, which made visibility difficult.
That sounds like a bigger problem than funding.
Yeah.
I think the main problem with this is it's a terrible idea.
Yeah. The plan failed. Lee began his mission with only 20 minutes of air, not to mention the complications of operating the craft. The darkness, the speed of the currents, and adding to the complexity is all combined to thwart Lee's plans. Once he surfaced, Lee lit the fuse on the explosive and tried multiple times to stab the device into the underside of the ship. So they were trying to do what the Hunley was trying to do. They were trying to drill a hole. I was wrong. I thought they were just drilling a hole, but he was trying to put a bomb in there, and apparently it just didn't go off. But yeah, it was only submersible for 20 minutes. So he had to paddle essentially the dumbest craft ever on the surface.
And he's doing physical. Yeah, he's doing physical.
Yeah. It's unbelievable physical exertion for 2 hours, only to then have to go down with time ticking, drill underneath, slip a bomb inside, and then make it back. And yeah, it didn't actually blow up. But I think he did drill the hole.
Well, that's what he told people. He was like, I drilled the hole, but it didn't. Here's another great fact about the American Revolution. Richard Howe, the guy on the boat.
Yeah.
You know what his nickname was? Black Dick.
Is that right?
That was his nickname.
Oh,
yes.
Nice.
Yes, and that's pretty amazing.
Black.
If you don't believe me that his nickname was Black Dick,
it was named out.
You go Google it.
Did he get like an especially bad case of VD and it was like actively rotting off?
No,
actually, he got the nickname Dick because he loved detective fiction. He was a private eye on the side.
He liked the black noir.
Well, I was going to say Black Dick just sounds like the county in England where he was from. Like all those English counties have weird names like that.
I got it because of my love of spotted dick. It's time for pudding, and I just eat so much spotted dick that they call me Black Dick.
I come from County Twisted Labia. Shout out to our UK listeners. We love you guys.
That'd be great if they were like, I drilled a hole, stuck the bomb in there, but would you believe the water kept putting out the fuse? Didn't really think this through, you guys.
We all live in a yeller submarine. Yeller submarine, a yeller submarine. We all live in a yeller submarine. Yeller submarine, a yeller submarine. We all live in a yeller submarine. Yeller submarine, a yeller submarine.
Until I heard the story of the turtle, like, it must have been in college sometime. I was like, I didn't even know they had fucking submarines until World War I.
Oh, yeah.
Just not ones that worked.
Right, yeah, just horrible death traps.
It was like they always had airplanes, just the airplanes would fall off a cliff and people would die.
Right.
Didn't fly that long.
Like the World War I planes, they're like still like fabric, and like basically there's like, I mean, you're not throwing the bomb overboard, but it's like one bomb, one plane.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
they had hot air balloons during the Civil War.
Oh yeah. There was they made a damn Civil War video game a couple of years ago, and I never played it, but I remember seeing on the commercials like one of the things was like you could commandeer a hot air balloon, and I'm like, that would be so insanely difficult to make anything happen with that. you
Also,
know?
they were tethered to the ground because they were just for observation.
Right,
It wasn't
right.
like Clash of Clans dropping bombs on top of people with a skeleton.
Yeah,
Like, it was you just went up there and looked and were like, I can see you guys. And it was like, oh shit, you couldn't shoot at them because they're too far away.
Yeah.
Right.
You're just really high.
Well, I mentioned
up.
if you're on the
Really high,
Southerns,
man. And
yeah.
those guys didn't want to fight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. They
They
just
were
wanted
high.
to get in the basket and smoke weed, dude.
Yeah, I heard that the hot air balloon was just full with like, just weed, weed smoke. And then they would,
It was like a volcano bag. Yeah.
Just up there, like it's the one safe place in the battle. Like, try and get me now, fuckers.
No, for real.
it's just
I would
like-
be the hot air guy in a second in the Civil War. That would be the
Just
best
up
place
there,
to
like,
be.
you'd be like some stoner up there,
Red Man
just
and
like
Method
pinching
Man
the
in.
people.
he was just up there
Civil
like,
War balloon dudes.
I can squish the whole army with my fingers. I'm gonna squish all your heads. Take that, Union.
Yeah.
it was the one time a stoner could be like, get on my level. And you were like, fuck, I can't.
Oh, the thing I was going to say about the hot air balloons, though, I think the funniest moment in World War I, not that there were that many funny moments, but
It's
is
hilarious.
the day that somebody had figured out incendiary bullets, and then the Zeppelins were like every one of them went down on like one day, essentially, because the Germans used Zeppelins to bomb London, and it was a big thing. And then somebody got the guns mounted to a plane and figured out incendiary bullets, and we all seen the Hindenburg video. So it was as soon as you could get a flaming bullet into those things, it was made pretty quick work
Well,
of them.
the whole thing about the Zeppelins is like it's the most dangerous idea. It's like the most craziest thing. It's like, hey, you guys, you know that shit that like blows up all the time. Like you know that thing that's
the most
real
combustible
hydrogen.
thing in the universe.
Hydrogen.
Like if you like get flame anywhere near it, it explodes. Like guys, what if we got like a plastic balloon and filled it up with like this crazy blow up shit? And then we use like an even smaller thing of fire like near it, and then like hope there's no lightning, and like we just drive around and pray to Jesus that we just don't catch on fire, because eventually we will, but hopefully not today.
and then we go up there with buckets and we mix together gasoline and washing fluid and we make ourselves some napalm and then we dump it down. You guys are from the South. You know that redneck that's like, if you mix together gasoline, you know that guy?
Yeah, gasoline.
yeah.
You can make
Like,
your
you
own
can make
napalm in your
napalm.
own
It's like,
backyard. Shit, we put it on ant beds. Tell them fuckers what's what. They tell their friends, guess what? We haven't had in 6 months. Ants.
Yeah, it's always the same guy. His name's Colby, and he shows up to the woods party with a replica AK-47.
Hey, you guys ever read that anarchist cookbook? Shit, guys, I got 3 pipe bombs in the woods right now. They're just sitting there ready to go off. It's my property. I can booby trap what I want, Uncle Sam.
I've eaten so much nutmeg, I've lost touch of reality.
I don't even think I ever got that far with it, but I did I had a big fire period there, about 11, 12 years old. And rubber cement is fucking great for that.
You know what's crazy flammable is the keyboard cleaner that spray if you spray airborne. That stuff, we would spray ant beds with that and then get like 10-foot flames.
WD-40, bro.
You like the way I was like, you guys know that one guy that always talks about how you can make napalm out of stuff?
And it's all of us.
We do. It's Rivers.
Yeah,
we do know him. We're in the room with him right now.
I do love Jurassic, like theoretical military technology, and I just imagine some guy being like, "Hey, forget the planes, forget the hot air balloons. We'll get a personal hot air balloon where it's a belt." And it's strapped to a balloon, and we'll give you a can of WD-40 and a lighter, and you just launch yourself up.
Well, this was something,
and then you can just start shooting people from above and kicking them,
Well, this is something that we referenced before we started rolling with
And
this
it's a
episode.
cloud with a smile on it.
that ties right into this. Is the first ever aerial bombardment of American soil happened during the Battle of Blair Mountain, which is which was a labor dispute come full on fucking battle in West Virginia.
I thought it was World War II with the Japanese.
No, this was in the 20s. This was
20s.
this is pre World War II.
Wow.
But what happened is basically after World War I, the government was trying to recoup a little bit of money, so they were like, hey, they weren't selling cannons or nothing, but if you wanted to buy your rifle, you were allowed for a very cut rate so that you could just buy your rifle and take it home. And now all these guys go back to West Virginia. They go back to their jobs mining, except now they're all heavily armed with state-of-the-art rifles and technology and battle skills. And then the Pinkerton Detective Agency basically tries to fuck with them, and it turns to a strike. And then it basically turns into what we just mentioned.
Yeah.
A man during this battle got a plane and flew over the battle and threw down gas bombs, and that is actually the first time American soil was ever bombed.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you've ever been through like West Virginia and like had conversations with people, those would be the number one. Those and people from Texas would be the number one people you don't fuck with.
Yeah,
you think that they would just have to see an airplane and they'd be like, "What is it? A god? A space alien?" They just jumped down in 1920 in West Virginia. You
Oh
know?
my
Like,
God,
probably-
yeah.
I did a show in West Virginia one time, and like I obviously did not have a good set, and I was like sitting at the bar by myself, and the guy sat down next to me, and they had a river going through town. He was like, "Yep, we got the most unsolved murders of any city in America." And I was like, and this is like out of the blue. I never talked to him, and he was just like, "Hell, we just throw them in the river and don't say nothing about it."
Oh, jeez.
And then I was like, "Check, please." But, like, I would never mess with like hillbillies. Those dudes are scary as fuck.
You should have been like, "Well, I just snapped a picture of you and sent it to a friend. So if you kill me, it's going to be solved, and that's going to bring your rate down. So you're probably going to not kill me." You know what I'm saying?
Let's keep the mystery alive, Bubba. Come on.
Well, I mean, it's funny because this gets to, aligns with your podcast that you do. I remember hearing stories, Jim Cornette interviews, because you interviewed Jim Cornette.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Yeah, you got to talk to Jim
and old
Cornette.
JC. And
By
it's
the way,
always
this is perfect. Joe doesn't know who that is, and maybe some of the
I think I know
audience.
Jim Cornette is.
Oh, do you?
He's the manager of Big Bad Vader, right?
Oh, fuck yeah. He's the guy with the tennis racket.
He was
Okay.
the weirdo with the tennis racket.
Yeah.
That's like when I stopped watching wrestling.
Oh,
Was
okay.
about that time. So
Yeah.
I caught the very end of Vader, and that was about
the
it.
second
R.I.P.
Louisville Whip.
Late great. Just died recently.
And he had this. His gimmick was that he was a rich kid.
Yeah.
And that his mom had a lot of money, and with her money, he was able to procure the services of various cavalcade of wrestlers, a stable of wrestlers that just did havoc across all over Tennessee and Kentucky and the Smoky Mountain area. Big Bubba Rogers and the Midnight Express, and they were. But he would tell these stories where it's just like, yeah, these guys came in. This guy just like had a gun and was pointing them at it. Just like all these stories where it's like people from that region, because he wrestled, based in the Smoky Mountains and Kentucky, Southern Indiana, stuff like that, and in West Virginia. These stories are just like, these people were just like, the folks that would go to the shows would just be like, yeah, we're gonna kill beautiful Bobby Eaton. We're gonna assassinate beautiful Bobby.
Dude, how much commentary is it that, like, just in our childhood, you could be a heel, but just by being a rich dude whose dad gave him everything.
Right.
And now the same region is like, that guy will save
That
us.
guy rules. Yeah.
Like,
Jim Cornette's character is essentially the
that's the
president.
best idea for an asshole. Everyone's going to hate this guy, all right? He just got money.
Yeah.
And he didn't really do anything for it. Now he's just buying people to do what he wants.
Right.
Like, well, how intelligent is your fan base when like they can believe that you can knock a person unconscious with a tennis racket?
No, it was a loaded tennis racket, Joe.
Dude, come on.
It was loaded. It had lead or something, and it had some mystery hardness on the inside that could take people out.
Because I think the idea behind it was that classy Freddie Blassie had a cane, a walking stick that was loaded that he would hit people with.
Right,
so he's like, well, I need something. And what's a rich kid sport? Tennis. So I'll just have a loaded tennis racket.
Yeah.
Obviously, golf wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I mean, that would have been way better.
Yeah, but you can't really hit somebody with a fucking golf club.
Yeah, you can't hit Ricky Morton with a 3-iron and have it, take it to the next town.
Yeah.
But you interviewed JC.
Yeah, he was great, man. He's so. And by the way, this was. It's funny because Dolph Ramser, I do the podcast. It's called The Road to Now, and I do it with Bob Crawford, who's a founding member of the Avett Brothers. And
oh shit,
his manager, like, we were in New York recording some stuff, and his manager like comes to me and Bob, and he's like, "Come here, I gotta talk to you." And we were like, "What, man?" He like takes us in another room, and he's like, "Got an idea for your podcast." And I was like, "Okay, that's much better than what I thought this might be."
Right.
Pushing us off. He's like, "You want to interview Jim Cornette?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." He set it up. Like, he set it up for us. And Cornette is like so incredible.
Was this live or was this?
So it was. We recorded. Bob couldn't be there for it, so I recorded it with my friend John Burr. If you guys know the band How I Became the Bomb, they had that that Uleo song. Like,
Oh,
that was
yeah,
the video.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's Burr's band. So
Oh, no shit. Yeah, I do know that band.
You guys would love Burr. Everybody, Burr's wonderful. But if you ever go to Burr's house, he dresses like it's the 70s.
Okay.
He wears medallions and like big collared shirts buttoned down, just like every day. Just
Nice.
like every
He looks
day.
like a stereo
Oh, dude,
salesman. Yeah.
every day. And at first you're like,
People don't want to hear that country music shit.
at first you're like, who is this guy? And then you're like, hey, I want to be friends with this guy.
Yeah.
But he'll invite you over to his house, and any given night he's on his back porch grilling, and he's got like an old TV with a VHS hooked up to it, and he's just watching old TV recorded videos of wrestling from the 70s.
Oh,
he
hell
does
yeah.
everything.
Wow.
So when Bob couldn't be there, I was like, Burr, come over here. And man, it's like he took us back to like why wrestling was so big, and like I never realized it because I remember in the 80s, right? WWF got huge, right? Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper. They had a cartoon and everything.
Right.
And I was like, man, that must have been the heyday of it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
No.
Because there were so many of those regional wrestling networks.
Oh,
He
yeah,
talked
yeah.
about like, dude, in Memphis, they would sell like 20,000 people like every Monday night.
Yeah, at the Mid-South Coliseum. Yeah.
Yep.
And Cornette was ringside
For all that
for
shit.
the Kaufman Lawler match.
he, like, taking
Andy
photos? That would've
Kaufman.
been great.
It was the first time he was on national television, and he was there and he saw all of it, and he told that story, and it was like, I know we all know Kaufman's amazing, right? We're comics.
Yeah.
But he talked about like how when Kaufman was on the ground, right, when he's rolling around.
Oh,
and
yeah,
the ref
yeah.
comes over to check on him. I don't know if you guys know this story.
Call the ambulance.
Call an ambulance.
Yep.
And he goes back over to Jerry Lawler and he's like, he wants to call an ambulance. And Lawler's like, fuck that, man. I'm not paying for that. He goes back over and Kaufman's like, I'll pay for it. Just take me. And Cornette said that his wife's good friend, I think it was, somebody who was close to the family, worked at the hospital where Kaufman was for 3 days.
Yeah.
And like went in.
Stayed in traction, right?
Yeah. Like everybody at the hospital believed that all his bones were broken.
Yeah.
Like he
For
wasn't
one
just in
pile
a
driver?
room going,
Well,
don't
the
look
pile
at me.
driver was the
Everyone
most
believed.
dangerous thing anybody could do to anyone.
That's true.
In that region.
Yeah.
And so Cornette was amazing, man. We talked to him over Skype, and it was like he was in the room yelling at us. Like
Yeah.
he's got such big energy.
Oh, my God, yeah.
He just took us back to like how, the early wrestling would work, and they would towns, they'd send a plant there days earlier.
Yeah,
Right, to kind of
yeah.
like blend in and everything, like he was a normal dude. And then the wrestling would come to town. And then the big wrestler would beat another big wrestler and be like, "Who dares to challenge me?"
Right.
And the guy that'd been there for like a week would be like, "I will."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they're like,
yeah.
"Oh, we'll put our money. We're never really putting our money on that guy." And people would take the bets, and that guy would go in and kick the big guy's ass, and then they'd make their money, and they'd
Right.
even go to the next town.
Marks. Yeah.
Yep.
It's just, that's a hustle.
I mean, yeah.
Did you guys see the Jim Carrey Andy Kaufman documentary?
I never did.
Don't
It's-
watch it. It's fucking ridiculous.
The thing that like pisses me off more than anything is that they do show his interaction with Jerry Lawler and like Jim Carrey's reaction with Jerry Lawler as Andy Kaufman. He was doing this like method acting shit where he was like trying to, really like become Andy Kaufman and all this stuff. And of course, Jerry Lawler, like you've listened to interviews where he talks about that time period and he goes like, we were friends and we made shitloads of money together. Like Kaufman was a great friend because he made me fuck tons of money and we were very friendly and we never had an
Made him
antagonistic.
famous. Made Lawler nationally famous.
Yeah, we never had an antagonistic relationship. I never would have been on David Letterman if not for this guy. Like he made me, brought me into the cultural zeitgeist of that time. And so during the filming of it, because they were enemies on screen and he was supposed to embody Andy Kaufman, and because he doesn't understand wrestling, he was an asshole to him the whole time. And Jerry was very rightly just being like, we were buddies, stop doing this.
Well, all you really need to know about that documentary is that Jim Carrey is so fucking insane.
Oh my God,
that
yeah.
He thinks he's Andy Kaufman to the point where he had a full-on conversation with like Andy Kaufman's love child so she could get closure. What fucking planet are you from?
Oh my God, yeah.
Wait, whose idea was that?
I have no idea.
Probably his, because he's a
Probably his,
maniac.
But like,
There was-
the point that he did that and was like, I felt really good about that. It's like, I'm sure you did, you fucking lunatic, but that's still like an insane thing to do.
Oh my God.
The other, because I remember he was like a jerk. He was like a jerk to Jim Ross, who was playing. He was playing, which was funny because it's like Jim Ross was playing Lance Russell, but Lance Russell, who was the announcer, was in the movie.
Yeah,
Not
it's weird.
playing somebody else, like the
Man,
ring announcer.
It's
yeah.
so weird how that happens. Like we also on our podcast had as a guest Tom Shadyac. Tom Shadyac wrote Ace Ventura with Jim
Oh,
Carrey.
that's where I know that name, because I used to watch Ace Ventura over and over like a psycho when I was
course you
6.
did.
And
Yeah,
he
dude.
directed all those movies like Bruce Almighty. Like he was like the hit maker in the 90s and early 2000s.
Right.
He gave it all up. By the way, he felt unfulfilled. He got hit, but he was riding a bike. He got hit by a car. Was in the hospital. Came out, sold everything, and now that guy lives in Memphis. and just built a climbing facility. His father started St. Jude.
Oh wow.
With
Danny
Thomas. And so he's now built a climbing program in like the worst part of Memphis.
Climbing
like climbing walls
like rock
and all that.
climbing?
Yeah, rock
Yeah.
climbing center.
Yeah.
Like state of the art.
Wow.
For those kids to come in and climb.
That's
And
excellent, yeah.
He bought this whole factory, and the other side, and we haven't talked to him about 2 years, maybe a year and a half. He was turning the other side into a state-of-the-art film studio. So kids who wanted to learn how to direct from that neighborhood could come in there, and him and other people would teach them
that's
how
so
to make
fucking
movies.
cool. Yeah.
Fucking amazing. But when he talked about, like, when him and Jim Carrey, like, he talked about Jim Carrey the first time he showed up in LA and did the Comedy Store, fucking bombed. Everyone hated him.
Yeah.
And, like, he had to leave. But, like, when he talked about it, like, they wrote that movie, and he was like, and when we went to make that movie, it was like we knew either this movie was going to be the funniest thing ever, or it was going to ruin our careers.
Right.
And at that moment, when people tell that story, you're like so hopeful. You're like the young, scrappy guy, these guys, right?
Yeah.
And then like flash forward, it's like, well, it turned out to be a hit, and it turned one of them into a real asshole.
Right. Yeah,
It's
one
like,
of them now is
Ace Ventura.
completely insane.
Yeah, I don't even know if you can call Jim Carrey an asshole. You just have to call him insane.
I think he's just
You just have
nuts.
to call him Andy Kaufman.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Andy Kaufman wasn't like a sociopath. Like Andy Kaufman was just like a quirky dude who enjoyed like pulling the wool over people's eyes
Doing
and being like a
transcendental
trickster.
meditation and
but Jim Carrey's full on like anti-vaxxer. Like you watch any conversation with him, and it's very clear he wants you to think he's like reached some level of consciousness,
Like he's a Buddha of some
where
kind.
he knows the secret of life, and it's like, Jim, you just do cocaine, buddy. You're not God. You just think you are. Like it's bizarre to watch him. Like any interview you watch him in now, like 30 seconds in, it's just like, oh, this guy read some book and is like having the second year of college moment where he just thinks he's figured the secret of life, and it's like, I read Nietzsche, and now I I don't read that stuff, so I don't even know how to pronounce it. But
Nietzsche. He really read Ray Nietzsche's autobiography.
Whatever it's called.
But
you know what I'm saying? Like
Ray Nietzsche had a hell of a run there.
He's
with
taken, but
Baron
you know what
von
I'm saying?
Raschke.
He's taken his like entry level to philosophy class, and now he knows his secret to life, and he needs to tell everybody.
Usually it's Kierkegaard, but yeah.
Have you guys read this? I know you guys read Malcolm X, but have you heard of this other guy, Mar X? He's amazing, man. He's got this whole philosophy about.
Hey, Malcolm, it's your cousin Mar.
I think they're related, man. Like there's
You
a
gotta
pretty strong
check this.
bloodline.
this new prison biography. It's crazy. So you talked to Cornette. Who else?
And you mentioned that you go into the Sputnik on Monroe. Thing pretty heavily, which is
with
like
Cornette. We do
one of the most fascinating stories.
Yes, and not just with Cornette. We also spoke about it. There's a historian at Rhodes College named Charles Hughes, and he wrote a book called. His first book was called Country Soul, about the kind of the creation of the Memphis, Nashville, Muscle Shoals triangle.
Yeah.
And it's great. Just real quick, he started out being like, people always told me that nobody cared about race in those studios. So his first question when he was writing his dissertation was like, how did that place not become racist? And then he said, I was doing research for about 15 minutes where I was like, oh, it was definitely racist.
Right,
and then
right.
He was like, why did people think it wasn't racist? But so he's writing, Charles Hughes is writing his next book on Sputnik Monroe and Memphis wrestling.
Oh, that's going to be incredible.
And dude, Sputnik Monroe was this amazing guy. You probably guys know the story.
Well, no, I mean, not all of us. Yeah, the people listening certainly don't.
He's a white wrestler. He's a heel, right, in Memphis. And this is days, in the 50s and 60s, like where people are coming out and, packing in. And he plays a heel. And like the way he got his name, people were just screaming stuff at him because they hated him, and they were just like, you're a communist, you're a terrorist, you're a Sputnik. And he was like, okay, I'm a Sputnik. And so he's Sputnik Monroe from then on. Basically, he hated the segregation that went on because at the wrestling matches, black folks couldn't sit with white folks.
Right.
They buy tickets to the Mid-South Coliseum, but they could only sit
in like the balcony,
the balcony area,
the mezzanine.
Yeah.
And so he like did all these like actions. It was like illegal for white folks to go into black establishments. He would show up like dressed all flamboyantly in like a super nice car and pull up to
Beale Street. Yeah,
hang out to Beale Street, hang out there, wait to get arrested. Then he'd go on trial, and he had a black lawyer defending him, right? So he did all this stuff. He became the hero of the black community in Memphis.
And
they wanted to come see him, and they wouldn't be able to sell all the seats because there was a segregated the colored section or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
And it was smaller, so it wasn't a thing of people who were African American couldn't come in to see him. It was like a limited amount of seats, and there was a demand for to see him. Yeah,
and so basically, he got so many black folks to come out to the wrestling matches, and they weren't selling out all the white folks section.
Yeah.
So he used the market to force desegregation.
Right, they
on
had
wrestling.
to desegregate, or else they didn't make as much money.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, how amazing is that?
It's
And this guy was like
amazing.
a heel, and he turns out to be, socially a hero.
Right.
But there's
right.
so many ways, man. Like Memphis is such a weird place because it's so deeply segregated. Like another big force in that was St. Jude.
Yeah.
Like whenever they went to desegregate, whenever it was segregated, right? All the hotels were segregated, and St. Jude was like, we're bringing in people from all over the world, and we have a ton of money. And,
Yeah,
and if you guys want to keep your hotels segregated, we're not gonna rent rooms for our patients.
Right.
And they brought in so many patients, they essentially forced the hotels to desegregate. And it's so amazing, like all these pockets of things and how they play in together, and like weird stories where you Sputnik Monroe and St. Jude Medical Hospital, Children's Hospital, like on the same side in this. It's
Right.
crazy.
Memphis is just a weird place in general. Like,
Do you mean there's something weird about a Bass Pro Shop inside of a pyramid made of glass?
Yeah, like everything about that city is bizarre. Like you'll go, like even on a street, it'll be like crazy, nicest neighborhood you've ever been in. You'll drive down a street and you'll be like, why is there 20 checkers on this one street? Like there's per capita, they have to have the most checkers.
Take that night train to Memphis. Take that night train to Memphis. And when you arrive at the station,
I'll be right there to meet you. I'll be right there to greet you. So don't turn down my invitation.
hallelujah,
Hallelujah.
hallelujah,
Hallelujah.
I'll be shouting hallelujah all the day. Oh, we'll have a jubilee down in Memphis, Tennessee, and I'll shout hallelujah all the day.
We did an episode on the history of the Harlem Globetrotters because, dude, I love the Harlem Globetrotters.
Oh, hell yeah,
I
dude.
have a son, he's 3, and like when he's probably like 4, I can't wait to take him to see the Globetrotters because they're just amazing athletes.
Yeah.
And so we did a whole episode on them, and those guys basically desegregated basketball because they were the best players. And, they weren't from Harlem. They were from Chicago. They took the name Harlem so that it was the Harlem Renaissance.
Right,
So
right.
you could put the name Harlem on a poster, and people would know that was going to be a black team.
A black team, yeah.
But they were the best basketball team in America. And when the NBA started, it was segregated. And people didn't want to go because, I think everybody kind of knew it wasn't the best talent.
Yeah.
So what they would do was they would book the Globetrotters to play the home team for the opening game. And then the problem was that people would leave because they were like, oh, you just saw the best team play. Like that.
Right.
So they would make you get there early to watch the NBA game so that you'd stick around and then watch the Globetrotters play.
Yeah.
And eventually people were like, I don't know, these guys seem like maybe they're the best basketball players.
Right.
And they basically had to desegregate because people knew the Globetrotters were better and they were left
Right,
out.
And
right.
there
They figured out segregation was a work.
And also, that one's a really good engineer. Maybe we shouldn't treat him like that because the color of their skin. And somebody was like, Bobby, I think them communists is getting to you.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Pinko liberal propaganda.
Well, it's funny because it was like the Harlem Globetrotters is a work. It's essentially just a way in which you get the Washington Generals and these guys are schlubs, and like you can do all this super cool stuff that wouldn't necessarily work in a competitive basket, like an NBA game. I mean, the Harlem Globetrotters were all the best players, as you said. And then the other thing that was interesting was, if I remember correctly, the Harlem Globetrotters were such a bigger attraction than the NBA was generating that the Harlem Globetrotters tried to sign, and I think he played for them for a while, Wilt Chamberlain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that they were going to give Wilt Chamberlain a contract that was much higher than an NBA contract.
Well, the reason they signed Wilt Chamberlain was because at the time, you could not play professionally in the NBA until your class graduated from college.
Yeah.
So Wilt Chamberlain left UCLA early. He left a year early, so he couldn't play in the NBA, so he played for the Globetrotters. And that's when the U.S. government was paying to send the Globetrotters all over the world. Like until like the last couple of years, the most highly attended basketball game was in Germany. Whenever the Globetrotters went there, they packed out a huge arena because people knew about them.
Right.
And the Generals, this is the interesting thing. I know this is a comedy podcast and being kind of a nerd.
No, I love
this
it.
is a nerd podcast.
Yeah, I was gonna say
It's a stud nerdcast.
Yeah.
The reason that the Generals became a thing was because it got to the point that people, like, originally they'd be like, Globetrotters are going to play like, the East German, like, because we would send them places because the Soviet Union was rightly being like, hey, you guys, hey, Africa, you guys are decolonizing. You guys want to be on their side or our side?
Right.
You should go try to sit down and eat in a restaurant in their country and see how they feel about you.
Yeah.
So we were like, no, we love black people. Here's Dizzy Gillespie. Here's the Globetrotters. So the Globetrotters would go and play games, and originally they'd play against, like, people from the country. But the Globetrotters would destroy them. So the countries would refuse to send their own people out there to be destroyed by these Americans. And so they had to be like, well, we got to send somebody over there.
Yeah.
So they created basically the Washington Generals. They created that team to go with them, just to be the team that got beat in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And it was actually its own franchise. It wasn't like a thing that the Harlem Globetrotters. Dude, Bob Crawford, my co-host from the podcast, he's from South Jersey, and the guy who owned the Washington Generals, that was a real thing.
Yeah.
Owned like a dive bar, and when Bob was when in high school and early in college, the punk shows would be there. And that guy was just apparently the coolest dude ever. And he swears to God they never threw a game.
They were just terrible?
We tried every time. Like, it's kind of, somebody should do an episode just on like
the Washington Generals.
And never mentioned the Globetrotters the entire time.
That's fucking amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I just assumed that the Generals were like, like once you jobbed out enough at the Generals, they'd bump you up to the Globetrotters, that they were just a recycling program for players. But oh my God, that's crazy.
Apparently the guy who owned it played, I don't want to get the numbers wrong, but he played on the Generals until he was like 50. And, he could hit 3-pointers. And I guess their side of the story, because it was the Washington Generals, and then it became something else for a while, like the New York Bullets or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And then it went back to the Generals. And according to his side of the story, when he was on the team, he had so many 3-pointers that they beat the Globetrotters one time. And the Globetrotters didn't want to lose their perfect records, so they erased the Washington Generals, created another team so they could say they were undefeated against that team.
Oh shit!
And so I don't know, man.
Wow.
You know how it is when you're in a punk bar and you were playing basketball with the Generals, so you were.
That's the thing I was gonna say. That does sound like the perfect thing for a guy who owns a shitty bar to tell people. Tell the lushes. Guess what I used to do? I owned the Washington
Here's
Generals.
the thing: if you go to any gym where there's a basketball court, the guy that's out there who's 55, 60 years old, there's always one guy that's out there in his short shorts and his socks pulled up, and his crew socks pulled up, and he's just draining free throws like he's Rick Barry, he's not missing, or he's just shooting threes, and he nails them. And it's always so funny because it's always this guy who's 50, 60 years old.
Yeah.
He's just
sick mid-range game because he never played with the 3-pointer.
Has just a massive
hitting
best
layups, man, just hitting layups over and over and over again. Elbows out.
There's a guy that was in my grad school department. His name is Bill Roy. Awesome sociologist. Is fantastic, great guy. But he played. He would always play basketball at the gym at the Wooden Center every day. Go out there and there'd be a group of people. And he was in his 60s. And watching him play basketball.
Please tell me he was hustling students.
He could have, honestly.
Just walked out there with a cane, did the Uncle Drew shtick.
Well, no. He
White can't jump, but with a 60-year-old dude.
Yeah,
but he's and he's a short guy too. He's probably 5'6".
Even better.
Right? And he's
better.
Woody Harrelson's played by Joe Pesci.
Yeah.
And he's got he's got his hair's gray. I mean, he looks like he's he's just an old. You look at him as an older guy, and he comes out there and he has the a great stroke, but he also has he can shoot real good, but he also has the old man game down. Where it's he has good handles, good fundamentals, good chest passing, but also that move, good use of elbows.
Does he do any of that dribbling between the legs bullshit?
Does he do any underhand shooting?
But is he doing the old man thing where he's just carrying? Carrying. That's a double dribble.
But he would do the move, and this is my favorite older person playing basketball move that is it's like kryptonite against everybody, even your best players. The butt move, where it's you're dribbling and your back is to them, so you're doing the post, and you just jut your butt out. And it just works every time because it creates that distance. And nobody's I'm going to reach in there and get really how can I defend against this butt sticking out at me? And there was a picture on the cover of the Daily Bruin of him just executing a really good no-look pass. Just very fundamental no-look pass. And it's just that's awesome. And I want to see a seniors NBA. I want to see Uncle Drew is
Let's
big.
Let's get Shaq out there. Let's get Kobe back.
Uncle Drew is awesome. It's
what's
really
Karl
popular.
Malone doing right
Dude,
now?
We can find Mike Jaminski.
Yeah.
Mike Jaminski was 40 when he entered the league. I don't know if you guys remember him.
Oh, Arvydas Sabonis, dude.
Kareem still looks good.
Dude, Arvydas
does look
Sabonis
good.
was almost rookie of the year at age 37. So I mean, it's just
yeah.
But yeah, it's
Where is Detlef Schrempf? That's what we need in our lives.
Detlef Schrempf. He coaches. I think he has some job where he's like a coach or an athletic director somewhere. he's like in business.
Yeah, he owns Detlef Shrimp.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a fried seafood place down in Destin, Florida.
Yeah, Detlef Shrimp.
Detlef Shrimp.
Everybody's favorite Seattle Supersonics themed sports bar.
When I was in high school, actually, we had in my small ass country town, right? I mean, like I graduated with 140 people, and that was big at the time.
Yeah.
But somehow our I'm using air quotes here. Our biology teacher, who was actually the basketball coach.
Of course, yeah.
We did not learn.
Shout out to
biology.
Coach Norton.
Usually it's history, man, but it was our biology.
It's usually history.
He would just leave us in the room with Bunsen burners and fire and be like, "Y'all don't no shenanigans, guys." And we were like, "What does this do?" And we were just like, if we died, it was fine because he had all the basketball players out there anyway.
Right.
He somehow scammed, like do foreign exchange students and all that stuff.
Yeah.
He somehow managed to get at Mount Pleasant High School 2 of the top players for the Lithuanian U18 basketball team.
Nice.
Tony, like 40 years old with like huge beards.
Tony and Gunter. And the Soviet Union had just collapsed recently. So these guys, dude, Tony was 7 feet tall.
Oh, I'm sure they were stoked to be there.
Oh, he would drink, like, dude, because his host family was on the soccer team with me, right? I was like a freshman. He was a senior. He was a senior citizen. He was way huge.
Yeah.
And he would be, I would never forget, like, being at soccer games. I could see him because I was on the bench. I wasn't very good. He would be up there, sitting in the regular bench with his, like, knees up to his shoulders, just fucking drinking cans of Eagle brand milk. Just putting them down, like, back in Lithuania, we're not having this. And that dude, I remember he liked me, man. Like, he liked me. And he was, because I was a freshman, they had put him in civics class because it was freshman, right? So he was like a senior, but he was in our class. And, of course, because it's North Carolina, our civics field trip was to the Philip Morris cigarette factory.
Oh, yes.
Which was always like
awesome.
You knew the kids that weren't going to graduate or probably go to prison because they were the ones who stole cigarettes from when they were there.
They found him underneath the machines.
Yeah.
AKA where USA Gold cigarettes come from, the ones that fall off the machines.
And so, like, on the way back, like, I was sitting next to Tony on the bus, and of course he was like hunched over, and I was like looking up at him. And he had already gotten his class ring.
He's just eating cigarettes.
Dude, he was.
Dipping them in the Eagle brand condensed milk.
Like, you were wanting some? I was like, no, buddy.
Lithuanian swizzle stick.
This dude's hands were like, I mean, they were massive, right?
Tetris mitts,
Right. And he looks at me, and he goes, ha, ha, ha. And then he takes his class ring that he already had, big high school class rings, and he puts it, he would do this thing where he would take his hand and put it on the back of someone's head, and pull his middle finger back like a fucking cannon.
Like a trip hammer.
Yeah. And just bap and hit people. And you'd see people like stars would go in their eyes, blood would come.
Knock them unconscious.
He was known for doing that. So, like, of course, I was sitting in the seat and I was like, I'm sitting next to him, right? And he looks at me and he goes, "Ha!" And he takes his class ring and he puts it on the end of his middle finger and turns it around backwards so that the big part is right in his finger. And he goes, "Watch this." And he takes his hand and he goes to put it on the head of a human being. And he pulls it back and I'm like, "Tony, please don't do it." And at that time, like, I realized he might do it to me, right? And then do it to that guy anyway. But
Someone's going to die today. Hopefully it's not me.
But he didn't do it. And I feel like I saved a life that day.
Tell us about your podcast, sir.
So my podcast is called The Road to Now. It's a history podcast. You can find it anywhere that you get goods from the woods.
Yes.
Which, by the way, shout out for your cover art.
Oh, yeah.
That's what's the brothers?
The Leuven brothers.
The Leuven brothers. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's such a great cover. But sorry, I was thinking about that because we did an episode on the history of country music and we talked about that.
Oh no shit.
But yeah, with Tyler Mahan Co. I don't know if you guys have.
Yeah. Cocaine and Rhinestones.
Yeah, so
we talked about that.
We did an episode a couple months back called "Y'all Ever Hear This," where we were just playing like weird shit we were into, and it was right after I heard the Rusty Kershaw episode about On the Beach. And if I'll say it again, if you need to just a good intro to the Cocaine and Rhinestones podcast, the On the Beach shit about him talking about honey slides and feeding Neil Young, getting Neil Young, the stoniest stoner that ever stoned, too high to fucking play music is really impressive. So, yeah.
So if you guys like Cocaine and Rhinestones podcast, you can listen to The Road to Now number 96, where Tyler Mahan Co. was our guest.
My God, yeah, I got to hear that.
We've had the most recent one we did was on the history of the World Cup, which was awesome because I did a thing like, the entertainer and the professor thing. My friend Alex Galarza, who he does it by himself, but he does history of sport. He does history of soccer.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So we had him, and then Matt Negrin, who's a producer for The Daily Show. But before he went to work for Bloomberg, before going to The Daily Show, he just spent like a year covering soccer freelance.
Yeah.
So I had them both on, and it's like a great dynamic. So that was the most recent one.
Oh, that's cool.
We did our World Cup special was a lot less.
Yeah, so our we put up a bonus episode where basically Pat is a huge fan. Me and Mr. Goodnight, our regular host here, have never watched any soccer ever, so we picked the winners.
And I think we should announce right here.
Oh, yeah,
that the winner. I'm still compiling it, but I believe Rivers was the winner of our picks
based on having never watched.
And this is
game
a guy
of
that
soccer.
picked Japan to go to the final.
Yeah.
Is it because they're radioactive now?
I think
Well, no, it was literally because I like Japanese wrestling. I was like, well, they're good at wrestling, so
Why wouldn't they be good at soccer?
I don't know.
So,
Yeah.
it's between Sam and Rivers. I need to figure it out. I'm last. My picks tanked. So in an upcoming episode, I will eat
tomato aspect.
The special quote unquote tomato aspect. So shows what expertise can get you.
But anyway,
R.I.P. octopus.
So obviously you're bored of the World Cup after hearing this wonderful episode on the World Cup.
No,
But if you want
no.
to go back to that,
Yeah.
we had Jim Cornette on. We've had so many people from the media.
I was gonna say there sounds like there's a lot of shit for our fans to check out. Yeah,
and we've done 99 episodes.
Oh,
and
that's
we're on
great.
a break right now. We just re-aired one we did with, I don't know if you guys know, My History Can Beat Up Your Politics. I'm going to plug it. I'm plugging another pot.
Oh, what is it called?
Yeah.
My History Can Beat Up Your Politics. It's an amazing one. We did a crossover with those guys on Elvis and American culture.
Oh,
Nice.
fuck. Okay.
And so all that's up there, theroadtonow.com. You can go there. And like I said, I do it with Bob Crawford of the Ava Brothers, and it's been fun. We've traveled to Mexico and done live shows. We've done live shows in New York. We traveled all over the country.
Wow.
That's
I like
tremendous.
that Avett Brothers HBO documentary that just dropped. That was pretty good as well.
Yeah, so Bob is the one who has his daughter had pediatric cancer.
Oh yeah,
in
yeah,
that.
okay,
So,
yeah.
A really amazing story that with her and St.
Wow.
Jude.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to watch that.
So we did a history of St. Jude with Rick Stadiak, who's Tom Shadiak's brother, who now runs half of St. Jude.
Yeah.
so
That's great.
We're all over the place.
I was gonna say So if you're listening to this, if you like us, it sounds like there's gonna be a ton of stuff you're gonna enjoy over at Ben's podcast. So
Yeah, so come over and listen. That would be
And if you go
great.
to Middle Tennessee State University,
you go to Middle,
sign up for Ben's classes.
You've got to take him to graduate. Might as well take him with
It's
me.
a captive audience.
Yeah.
And then I've got some shows in LA. I don't know when this is going to air, but I'll be at the Comedy Store Saturday night doing bitch comedy. I'll be doing Mallory Fusella's show.
Oh, sweet.
July 22nd.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Redondo
Down in
Beach at the Slip
Redondo.
Bar. And and if you hear this and you're like, oh, Ben's in town until July 24th, but it sounded like he only had 2 shows lined up between now and then, give me a call. sawyourcomedy@gmail.com.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
available.
and where can people find you on like Twitter, Instagram, that kind of stuff too?
It's funny because you said the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing over here.
Oh yeah. I was describing listening to anytime I hear Pat's academic stuff because when I invited Ben on the show, I was like, yeah, it's going to be interesting because you're an academic who's also a comedian. We also have another academic here, Dr. Pat, who's also a comedian, and we started talking about it. And I was like, it's always funny to hear Pat on like you did a sociology podcast that we retweeted and stuff like that, and it's always funny. I'm like, I feel like I know Mr. Hyde, so it's weird hearing Dr. Jekyll's dissertation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because Pat and I just talk about like wrestling and music and dumb stuff, and then you hear him actually talking. You're like, oh, this is the smartest person I know.
Well,
Okay.
no, I mean, but if you go to any of my lectures, I definitely am more. I see less academic.
Yeah,
So I
okay,
skew
that's
less
fair.
academic.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing. Fields of cultural production are weird. I would describe them as weird.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a layered pathway to things. There's
Right,
layered
right.
questions. Where when you're doing this, you're really split between 3 different fields. But you never leave one. You go to the next one as you advance.
Right.
It's a really interesting concept that I've come up with on my own about how the way that stand-up comedy, particularly in Los Angeles, works.
Yeah.
And so you have 3 different ways that people progress through it.
I've got an academic paper for you, my man.
I may have read your dissertation yesterday. And
Really?
was just saying what your major arguments to you.
Son of a bitch.
I told Rivers I was going to do it. And I
We
planned
set
to do
you
it more
up.
subtly throughout the entire
man,
time.
you-
But I was like, he's a sociologist. He knows nobody who's a historian has ever read it. Any of his work, and nobody ever respects it. If someone came to me with my own idea from a paper, I'd be like, "Oh, my friend, let's talk about it," because nobody else cares.
Oh yeah, no. It's weird when I see people actually read it because they send the stats for it. I'm like, somebody read this thing? Like it's so funny. For my bachelor, my honor thesis, they keep them in the library.
Oh God, yeah.
And it's missing. So somebody got it and has buried it, and it's not
was
me.
that somebody you?
No.
Wow.
Listen, if it's one of you guys listening to the fucking show, give it back. Give Dr. Pat his shit back.
No, you can keep it. Yeah.
Somebody's going to show up at one of your lectures going, "Excuse me, sir, could you sign this for me, please?"
Oh, no.
It's gonna be all dog-eared and highlighted.
Yeah.
It'll just be like, oh my god.
It was like a while back, somebody pulled out Newt Gingrich's like master's thesis or something like that, and they were like, "Look at this garbage." And I was like, I don't like Newt Gingrich, but let's not make fun of him for what his master's thesis.
Oh yeah, dude.
It might have been like 23 and had to write like 150 pages in like 4 months, and he might have just like been like got out of there and squeaked out.
Oh yeah.
That's the thing. Everybody's bachelor's thesis or master's thesis is really not that good, and if it's good, you're probably going to get a MacArthur Genius Grant.
My friend Christopher Hamner, who finished his PhD right when I was starting mine, he said, "Ben, look, there are two types of dissertations. There are great dissertations and there are finished dissertations.
Yeah.
But there are no great finished dissertations."
Yeah, exactly.
TheRoadToNow.com. You can find Road to Now on anywhere you get on anywhere. I'll have a PhD on anywhere you get your podcasts. You can find me online if you want my ridiculous comedy stuff. Sawyer Comedy on Twitter. If you want the nice historian side of me, at Ben_Sawyer. And that's where you can find people trolling me and then me asking them to say what they said to me to Sawyer Comedy.
Yeah.
Like, you should ask this guy about it. Because,
Let's do it over here so I can really tell you what I think.
Exactly, because I'm like trying to be respectful for my students, but also, Mr. Hyde's over there. You should talk to him.
Yeah.
We'll definitely do that. And thank you again, Ben, for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah,
I've heard so many good things. Rivers, man. When I was out here 2 years ago, everybody was talking about Rivers Langley.
Oh, good.
It was like
good.
how funny you were, man.
Yeah.
So it's great to meet you.
Oh well, yeah, man, hell yeah, and I hope, I hope I'll be in Tennessee soon. I feel like every time I come to Nashville, it's always in April during that record-breaking comedy show that we always talk. We had a whole episode where we talked about that with our friend Brent Schmidt, but that always syncs up with when I'm in Alabama, and I always like want to do Nashville shit, but. Truth be told, it sounds like everyone is doing mushrooms, and I'm not a drug guy, so I'm like, that just seems like it's not going to be fun.
Not everyone is doing mushrooms.
No, okay.
The people who are not doing mushrooms are living a far worse, like surreal existence because they're like, no, we're sober and we're doing this.
Yeah.
Like I got a 3-year-old son. I take him with me, and I'm like, just sit right here because you got to do 15 minutes at a time. You can't get off of that doing. You don't break the record.
Right.
I now partially hold 4 Guinness records. Psych, I've broken Guinness records 4 times, but twice we broke the one that we broke the year before.
Wow.
God, so.
But yeah, if you want to hear all about the that, you can check out our world. What is it called? I think it's World Record Breakers. The name of the episode with Brent Schmidt, where he went down and did it.
Breakers.
We're eventually going to break the number of records that we've broken of ourselves.
Yeah.
And they'll give you that record if you pay them a couple $100. They're real into that at Guinness now.
Yeah, but point is, I'm going to make it down to Nashville one of these days. And
always welcome.
Yeah, we'll do it up.
Chicken.
That's right. Yeah, hit up. Shout out to Bolton's. That's my jam. That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
We can talk about hot chicken for a whole episode. But you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/thegoodspod. We're on Twitter @thegoodspod. Every episode ever, youtube.com/thegoodspod. Big shout out to our friend Richard Eden up there in the Klondike doing the hard work at thegoodspod.com. Pat, what should the folks do when they get to iTunes and Google Play?
Rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend, spread the word, and listen to Ben's podcast, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, that's right.
And it shows the attitude of gratitude. And as Mr. Goodnight would say, if you don't have the attitude of gratitude, well, fuck you.
And can I add one more thing here? Is
Absolutely.
that okay?
Yeah.
This is disinterested because this is not my podcast.
Oh, no.
But please go rate podcasts. You don't even realize, when you rate them, it boosts them in the numbers, and then more people can find out about them.
We say it every week, and it's like, come on, let's
we
do
need
one.
to overcome podcast 1.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, as a concluding remark, I'll say I do not believe that Goodnight exists. I've heard him on this podcast. I can't believe he's a real person, so this only sustains my theory. Sawyer
Miss
out.
him by a week.
I know. Song of the week this week, we're going to play another one from the fantastic new EP from Tyler Plazio. It's called Memories. Tyler's a guy who is a fan of our show, and we're big fans of his as well. You can find this record everywhere. It's out now, and you can catch him touring up and down the East Coast as well. Go see Tyler. Go support good people. The song is called What a Joke. We'll see you next week.
I feel like nothing I ever do matters. Like all of my dreams are a joke. But all of these people keep telling me I'm doing everything super
Goods from the Woods was mixed, edited, and distributed by me, Rivers Langley. You can find the show on Twitter at The Goods Pod. Our theme song was composed by DJ Smiles. Check him out on Twitter at DJ Smiles.